Hi there, my name is Adam Shawwalker, your host, and welcome back to On the Flip Side. Today, I'm going to be covering this new Kavinsky record, Reborn. So this is the first release from Kavinsky in 9 years, following his first full-length album, Outrun, in 2013. An album that expanded on the single and the remixes that were on the Night Call EP. And it feels like this album is kind of coming at a weird time, at the very least in this form. Because the thing is, with Kavinsky, he really had a lot of wind in his sails for his older releases. Synthwave as a whole was a much more relevant, more fresh genre, and had the benefit of having Night Call used as the main theme in the movie Drive. And so now we have this new release that doesn't really know where to go or what to do. And like I said, synthwave was a much more relevant genre about 10 years ago. It wasn't new, but it certainly wasn't as stale as it is now, and you'll notice that all of Kavinsky's contemporaries did one of two things. Either they lost their relevancy slowly, like Laserhawk, and stopped putting out new music, or they found a new way to reinvent their sound, like Gesaffelstein. And for whatever reason, Kavinsky has kind of re-emerged with this new album that, while I can't say is really awful, it does lack a lot of staying power. And it is kind of monumental as a task to follow up such a huge track like Night Call. I mean, it was so big he had to put it out again on his first full-length track listing. And there are a few admirable tracks here, most notably Renegade, which does kind of recapture some of that like grand pattern grid world cruise sound, while tapping a little bit more into the anthemic side of things. But most of this album is very, very one note. And I really tried to sit with this album and pick it apart, but there's really not much to anything here. There's a lot of really cool moments, but in the end, the song structure tends to be lacking, mostly in that once one of these kind of cool moments is brought to the table, it's the only thing the track can conjure up. The trick is over, but you gotta sit in the room and make sure that the bunny that was pulled out of the hat doesn't crap on the floor. And while most of this album ends up leaning into the territory of filler, at worst some of these songs go past minimalism into not sounding done. The track Goodbye with Sebastian Tellier, for instance, is the most guilty example of this, and if this is like a finished track, it's so underwritten to the point that I can't really see what they were going for here. And I mean, the feature Sebastian Tellier does have some really low-key songs in his own right, but this sounds like a complete underutilization even by those standards. And past what sounds unfinished, or what sounds like filler, or the moments on this album that are presented in an initially flashy way then are leaned on way too much, you get these almost bangers that kinda sound like a grasp at trying to reclaim that spark, that lightning in a bottle of the big single. And like I said, the closest that they get to that is on Renegade, but the other attempts here, like Plasma for instance, is generally overdone to the point that this track specifically is just really corny. At worst you get tracks like Cameo, which sounds like a song that walked into the room with shutter shades on. I mean, it is very, very 2009. And to be fair, that's mostly on the feature Korean Lomax. The beat is pretty broad and I could see it being used in a different, less dated sounding track. But really, the rest of the songs here kind of just fly by, and not in a very good way. Even the other big track on this album, Zenith, ends up being more of a novelty than anything else. It's a pretty decent song, but you can tell that this and Renegade are really the only songs that had some thought put into them, and it only really makes them feel like outtakes or leftovers from older releases. So there's really not much staying power past those two songs other than the lasting bad taste this album has left in my mouth. There are ways that I think synthwave has gone as a genre that have been really cool, really interesting, and really fresh, but Kavinsky hasn't delved into any of those avenues. So at a meager 47 minutes, this album still feels really bloated because at the end of the day, some ideas really needed to be developed further, and other areas, fat really could have been trimmed, and in the end, the album just doesn't end up working all that well. And it's cool to see a new album from this guy, but it is disappointing that this is the result, because over 9 years, there really should have been enough time to put out something more thought out and more developed. Anyway, Reborn I'm feeling an okay 3 on. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of the album in the comments below, and remember to drop a like and subscribe, and if you want to help out the channel further, you can check out my Reverb store, my Instagram, and now my Depop. Links to those are in the description below. Thank you all so much again, and we'll see you on the flip side.